How we doing, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Mash and Drum Whiskey Room. I am Jason C., and if you're a subscriber, thanks for coming. If it's your first time here and you're looking for the latest in whiskey and bourbon news and reviews, you have come to the right place. So think about hitting that subscribe button below, and also think about hitting that bell notification right next to it so you know when I'm putting out a new video. Today, we have an exciting bottle. This is the Orphan Barrel Rhetoric 25-year-old bourbon. This is the final release of the series, just came out this year, so let's get into it. So since this is the first Orphan Barrel that I've reviewed on my channel, I was really curious and wanted to learn more about really who and what Orphan Barrel does. So the Orphan Barrel Whiskey Distilling Company was organized in 2013 by Diageo, who is the world's largest spirits company. Its purpose was to provide a means for marketing a large stock of several thousand barrels of ultra-aged American whiskeys that had been maturing in the Stitzel-Weller Distillery in Shively, Kentucky. Now, although Orphan Barrel as a company is relatively young, its whiskeys have deep roots in the wild history of American whiskey. In announcing the new company, Diageo described it as an endeavor to rescue long-forgotten barrels of rare and delicious whiskey and share them with others. We like to think the project is founded in dark, quiet corners of rickhouses around the world where artisanal whiskeys were forgotten, just waiting to be discovered. So far, Orphan Barrel has only released American-sourced whiskeys and one Canadian-sourced whiskey, which was the Entrapment. It was a 25-year-old whiskey from Crown Royal in Gimli, Manitoba. According to Ewan Morgan, the National Director, Diageo Masters of Whiskey, it's possible that at some later date, whiskeys from Scotland and Ireland might also be offered. So the Orphan Barrel Whiskey Distilling Company is headquartered in Tullahoma, Tennessee, where Diageo-owned Tennessee whiskey producer Cascade Hollow Distilling Company, the former George Dickel, is also headquartered. The whiskey is hand-bottled at the bottling plant in the same town. Now, while the whiskeys have been maturing at Stitzel-Weller, none of the Rhetoric whiskeys released to date were produced there. They were all originally distilled at the Bernheim Distillery. At the time, it was owned by United Distillers, one of Diageo's predecessor companies. So from 1992 through 1999, Bernheim used 3 separate mash bills for its whiskeys. These were the original Stitzel-Weller formulas and the traditional Bernheim formula of 86% corn, 6% rye, and 8% malted barley, barreled at 125 proof. The Rhetoric whiskeys, released by Orphan Barrel, are all based on the historic Bernheim recipe. Now, in 1999, Diageo began selling off many of the various brands and distilleries that United Distillers had acquired to other companies. The Glenmore Distilleries was sold to Barton, the Bernheim Distillery was sold to Heaven Hill, along with the Old Fitzgerald brand. Sazerac purchased the Old Weller brands, and Rebel Yell went to the David Sherman Company, now known as Luxco. So the aging stock at Bernheim that Heaven Hill and the other distilleries didn't purchase was transferred to Stitzel-Weller, which is how they eventually came into the possession of the Orphan Barrel Whiskey Distilling Company. A lot of the whiskey world have criticized the idea of lost or orphan barrels as a marketing ploy, but in fact, it is common enough for any spirit that has had long maturation for barrels to get lost, miscounted, mislabeled, or not even accounted for, only to be rediscovered years later. So Orphan Barrels, the concept around which the Orphan Barrel Whiskey Distilling Company was organized, is an altogether different concept. The previous releases probably represented a bottling of 700 barrels each. It's not inconceivable that there were several hundred or more barrels of Rhetoric at Stitzel-Weller eventually slated for release. Whatever the number, Diageo isn't saying. For the bourbon enthusiasts like me, the thought of hundreds of barrels of ultra-aged whiskeys just sitting in a warehouse is kind of a dream. Now, these whiskeys were distilled at the former Bernheim Distillery and have the same mash bill. Orphan Barrel has been releasing successive batches of Rhetoric whiskey that are 1 year older than their predecessor. The sequential bottlings are supposed to end with this one bottle we're reviewing today, which is Rhetoric 25. So here's the cool looking Orphan Barrel bottle for Rhetoric 25. I love the vintage label on the front. Now, each successive bottling of Rhetoric has had a 0.1% increase in the ABV. Since the cask strength was undoubtedly higher and the whiskey was diluted down for bottling, it was initially unclear why successive yearly bottlings were diluted down to have slightly higher ABVs. But according to Diageo, however, the slightly higher ABV was because Orphan Barrel wanted people to taste how an extra year in the barrel affects tastes. So here are the facts about this bottle, guys. This final Orphan Barrel 25-year Rhetoric release is bottled at 91 proof in 750 milliliter bottles. Diageo has made it known that the mash bill in these barrels broke down to 86% corn, 8% barley, and 6% rye, which is a pretty low rye bourbon if you've ever heard of one. But this is available now with an MSRP of $140. So let's get an open here. Ooh, a very, very light pop. Let's pour. This should be pretty dark. Yeah, it is pretty dark. All right, let's get into it. All right, guys, it is time to get into the Rhetoric 25. Sorry if the history lesson was a little bit long, but the whiskey nerd in me couldn't resist doing the research, and hope you guys learned a little bit something about Orphan Barrel and where the whiskey comes from. So, these ultra-aged bourbons can be pretty challenging, I think, for distilleries. They could tend to be a little bit bitter, a little bit too oak forward, a lot of tannins you could get mixed in there. But I think, last year's 24-year Rhetoric was actually really good. It was a lot fruitier than I thought it was going to be. So I'm wondering how another year in the barrel for this whiskey affected it. So let's find out. Let's get into the nose here. Definitely wood forward. I think we were expecting a lot of oak, a lot of wood on the nose, but not in a bitter way. There is a really deep dark cherry note on this too, which I'm really liking. This is oak, cherry. There is a very big punch of allspice now that I'm getting. Might be getting a hint of maybe there's some black licorice in there too, which is surprising considering it's such a low rye. Definitely a big punch of vanilla. The caramels that are in there, they're very deep, they're very dark. I mean, you can really tell that age that's in there. All right, well, before we get into the palate, guys, let me show you the color real quick. It is definitely pretty dark. It's definitely got that dark copper feel to it. Really nice. The viscosity is pretty serious. It is coating the glass to like, I always say like paint or like Elmer's glue. I mean, once I tip it, it is taking forever to work its way down the glass. So it's pretty viscous. So I'm pretty excited for that. All right, guys. So let's get into the palate. Cheers. Here we go. Wow. Okay. Wow, a lot of flavors coming through on this one. So, first sip. It is very oak forward. Again, we kind of expected that, I think. A lot of oak in there, but it's very sweet oak. I'm always scared with overaged bourbons that you're going to get that bitterness, and this one is not having it yet. There's a lot of sweet oak flavor in there. There's a big punch of vanilla in the front too. Let's go in for another sip. Ooh, that's good. Okay. There's a bitter chocolate note in there though. It's not bitter. It's not bitter wood flavor. It's more coming through as a chocolate flavor. That's really nice. Caramels, vanillas. The finish is not very long. It's kind of medium. For a 25-year-old bourbon, I think, maybe you would like it to be a little bit longer of a finish. But you definitely feel the proof a little bit. It's not overwhelming. All right, let's go for another sip here. Okay, so on the front, you're getting those notes of a really ultra-aged bourbon here. You're getting the wood. You're getting almost a leather and tobacco type flavors. I know, a lot of people that really love those flavors. Right on the very end though, when it gets till about like halfway between mid palate and the finish, that's when you get that cherry, allspice, a little bit of baking spices in there, maybe a hint of brown sugar, but those vanilla, caramel, cherry notes are really kind of hitting more slightly on the finish rather than the front of the palate. The front, you're definitely getting those leather tobacco notes, all those, you know, those long aged ultra wood notes. So let's go in for another sip here, guys. All right. Oh. Okay, so as you keep sipping on this bourbon, those really kind of strong wood notes, the leather tobacco, really kind of take a back seat, and then it starts getting nice and sweet. You start getting that really nice corn sweetness that you love in bourbon, the caramels, vanillas, a little bit of that cherry is coming through. Now it's hitting more mid palate than kind of near the finish, which is kind of nice. You're still getting a little bit of that chocolate, maybe a cocoa. It's got a little bit of a spice too on the end, which is kind of nice. I think that's probably from, you know, kind of the wood spice there. It's really good. All right, guys, let's go in for one last sip here. Here we go. Oh, wow, this got a really nice caramel dark brown sugar note on there. Wow. I think this is getting a little bit better as it's been sitting out a little bit. Really good. So as I mentioned, front of the palate, you get a lot of oak, get a lot of, you know, a lot of wood flavor, a little bit of maybe leather tobacco there. Sweet, very sweet though. Then that mid palate, you're getting the vanilla, the caramel. I just got a really nice hit of brown sugar there on the palate as well. That was really good. A little bit of cherry. Then right on the end, it finishes with a just kind of a nice, warm, a little bit of a spicy wood kick, which is really kind of good. All right, guys, so as I mentioned, this bottle was retail price of $140. That's what I got it for. Some retailers are really jacking up the price on this already since it's the final release, supposedly. I would not pay any more than $140 for this. It's got a really great bourbon flavor profile. I think I did expect more of a flavor punch from a 25-year-old bourbon. I think the proof definitely, for me personally, hurts it a little bit, being only 91. But if you do like really wood-forward, oaky bourbons, I think you would probably enjoy this. The only issue with this is that as you keep sipping on it, the oak really kind of goes away and you're just kind of left with more of a sweet bourbon. And I feel like there are other bourbons that could give you more of a enjoyable drinking experience as you drink it from the middle of the glass all the way to the bottom. All right, guys, well, thanks for watching the Mash and Drum Whiskey channel here on YouTube. Really appreciate you coming by. If you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button. Please hit the like button below. If you haven't yet, please find me on Instagram, and you can also find me on Twitter. I love talking with you guys. Let me know what you think about this. If you haven't yet, please join me on my live streams, which are Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which are always a lot of fun. And like I always say, it is not about the whiskey, it is the people you share it with. So cheers, everyone, and I'll see you next time.